or maybe you're thinking about something else happening today. Maybe you're thinking about something that's happening this week. I know my friend there in the back on the camera is probably thinking about the Super Bowl today, because he's that guy. No, not at all, no. But somebody is. I know we've been Taylor Swift to death this week, that's for sure. And I'd just be happy not to think about Taylor Swift for a while, you know, because it just seems to be a never-ending thing here. But you know what? We are all human, and we are all distracted by something, and distractions are constant, and they're the same. They mean the same thing for everyone in this world. You know, when I'm engaged in a mundane task, and there's a few mundane tasks I have to do, like the laundry or whatever, I find I have a tendency to daydream. When I pray, I have a tendency to be distracted, don't you? If we're honest, when I pray sometimes, I'll start praying about something, and then that subject that I'm praying about will lead to something else, which will lead to something else, which will lead to something else, and I'm going, wait a minute, back up, you know, get back there, and let's get back at it again. And I remember one of the ladies in our group, our friends in our group saying, you know, I pray and I just get right off track. I start roaming and stuff. And she says, I feel so guilty about that. And I said to her, don't feel guilty. I remember John Maxwell saying once, you know, if you wander around and wander off during prayer, it just proves you have a mind. So what you do is you just stop and you back up and you come back and be in the moment with God. Because God is in the moment with you and wants to be in that moment with you. You know, it seems that the distraction that we are experiencing now is greater than at any other time in human history. Take distracted driving, for example. There's a lot of that around there. You know, when I drove for Edmonton Transit System, when I drove a bus for 35 years, there were any number of times I humbled myself because my mind, it was easy. Driving is such a repetitive thing. It's not the driving that's the hard part of driving a bus, it's the people you got to deal with. That's the big thing. But the driving in itself is really nothing. I could just, you know, like that. I hate to say it, but it did happen. But the thing was that I was humbled by that because I would forget sometimes to make a corner when a turn that I was supposed to make or something else. And it's just like, I did it again, and I did it in front of an audience behind me. Let me tell you, that's embarrassing. But I would do that constantly. You know, it's just like, why do I keep doing this? But I allow myself to be distracted by so many things. One of the things that I've seen is the worst thing about distracted driving is texting. A lot of people text when they drive. And statistics from around the world indicate the number of accidents caused by using phones while driving is increasing. Now here's a stat for Canadians. 47% of Canadian drivers admit to using their mobile phones while they drive. And here's another stat you need to take into consideration when you're doing that, when you're distracted driving like that. Taking your eyes off the road for 5 seconds at 90 kilometers an hour is the same as driving the length of a football field with your eyes closed. Think about that. Doesn't that kind of shake you up a little bit when you think about that? Once I just thought, I'm going to close my eyes for a couple of seconds, and I just about freaked because, you know, you're driving blind, basically. And 2 seconds was all I was going to allow myself for that little experiment. And the other thing is that younger drivers are more likely to die from accidents caused by distracted driving. And around 1/5 of all fatal road accidents are caused by distracted driving. An example, for Alberta as an example, deaths caused by distracted driving are higher than by speeding or driving under the influence of alcohol or drugs. And we have to deal with a lot of other things besides texting. There's a lot of distractions we experience while we're driving. Now, I can tell you in Edmonton that a driver in a rush hour in a large city will have to pay attention to around 3,000 items in their driving environment. Now, I've heard about Drayton Valley, and Drayton Valley is like a 5-minute rush hour, I've heard. This is what I've been told, not by me, but by the people I know who live out here. I wish I had your rush hour, let me tell you, because my rush hours were not fun. They just seemed to keep going on the longer that I drove for a living. Wasn't a lot of fun. But I've seen all kinds of things, and so have you maybe too. My daughter once saw a driver texting while driving with his feet. He just went, and he went whipping right by him. And here's another one I heard about that was pretty close to me. There was, where did I go here? Okay. Yeah, there was a driver who was pulled over by a policeman for using a laptop and talking on his phone at the same time. Can you believe that? See, when we're driving, we're going to a destination. So we should be concentrating on our driving so we can reach there safely. But when we allow ourselves to be distracted in one way or another, it means that we would rather be someplace else. It means that we're not looking at where we're going. Distracted driving, now that's a problem for a number of us. Not everyone, but for a number of us. But for everyone, there's a much bigger issue at stake. So many of us are guilty of a modern phenomenon called distracted living. I believe that people have never been more distracted in history than we are now. There are so many things that clamor for our time and attention that they divert our attention from the kind of things that would be so good for us, so right and so beneficial for us. We're not looking where we're going. And even as Christians, we realize that we have a vision in our lives. We believe that God has a purpose for our lives, a goal for our lives. We're going somewhere, but I'm not here. I'm not engaged. I'm off somewhere else. And the thing is, we have this reality that through Jesus Christ, we can live a life of joy, a life of purpose, of meaning. We can live a life that you and I would be proud of. And the truth is that in Jesus Christ, it's actually possible. Because of Christ, we can live a life where at the end of our lives, we can look back and say, I didn't waste it. At the end of our lives, we have the potential, because of what God has done for us, to be able to look back at our lives and say that we didn't miss it. We could, however, too often, live the way we drive. We're guilty of distracted driving, and we can be guilty of distracted living. At this time, right now, I'm reading this book by Matthew Kelly that's entitled The Biggest Lie in the History of Christianity. And he claims in that book that the biggest lie in the history of Christianity is that holiness is for someone else. That holiness is only for special people. It's not for you. It's not for me. And yet, because of what Jesus Christ has done for us by pouring his Holy Spirit into our lives, ordinary moments now have the capacity to become holy moments. And if a person's holy life is made up of ordinary moments, then holiness is entirely possible for you and me. Because holiness doesn't come down to doing all these extraordinary things that seemingly make you holy. Instead, what it comes down to is to have ordinary moments where we realize that God is present, God is active, and this moment is his. And so if we think that this moment is his, that every moment is his, a number of these holy moments, we could call them, stacked together can lead to a holy life. You don't have to go anywhere else to do it. You don't have to wait for another time to do it, because right now in this place, and I'll say it again, God is present, God is active, and this moment is his. See, the lie is that holiness is perfection, because it's not. It is not perfection. Holiness simply means to be consecrated, to be set apart by God for a purpose, a greater purpose. So we can practice holiness because of that. And that means that even in the most mundane of tasks, you and I can have teachable moments when we have the awareness of God's presence, if we are undistracted. What's the biggest lie in Christianity? That holiness is unattainable. It's unreachable. It's only for a few certain select people we might consider spiritual giants like a Billy Graham, just off the top of my head. And if that is the biggest lie in Christianity, then what is the second biggest lie in Christianity? That is that holiness is not only unattainable, but that holiness is undesirable. And we could say that, fine, holiness is attainable because God is present, He's active in every moment, and even then, we might wonder if it's worth pursuing it. And sometimes, if we're honest, even as we gather here to worship, to pray, to come together, the question can come to our minds, is this: why even bother? The truth is, instead, that holiness is not only attainable. For the Christ follower, it's desirable. Imagine what life would be like if you could notice each and every ordinary moment. If you were awake at each moment. Imagine what life could be like if you lived in such a way that each ordinary moment mattered. Just think about that. Imagine it. I know it's not always possible. You know, if we were to think about everything that's going on around us, we'd go nuts, because we weren't made to be that way. That's not the way our bodies are set up. But we have the opportunity to stop and take this time and worship and think about in that moment that God is here. Imagine what life would be like if you could reach each and every moment, if you were awake at each moment, so that you would not miss out on what God has for you. See, folks, here's the thing about holiness and the holiness. It's discovered in the moment. It's discovered in the holy moment, the time where we take to focus on God. He is there, and He is there to help us, to build us up, to equip us, to give us a purpose, a focus. So it's not only possible for someone else, it's possible for you and I too, right here and right now. Here's the problem. God is here, but so often I'm not. Unlike Him, I'm not living in the moment. Imagine if we lived in the present moment with the present God, and if we were really to focus on Him, what would our response be? Could we be amazed? Could we be astonished? See, in this morning, we're looking at Mark 1:21-28. And what's happening there is that Jesus is speaking in the synagogue in Capernaum. And as He was speaking, all who heard His voice were amazed at His teaching. Indeed, they were filled with wonder. Did we read that this morning? I don't think we did. So you know what? I want to go back to that, because you'd say, hey, what's this story? I don't really know. So I want to go back to that. And let's read this story. Jesus and His companions went to the town of Capernaum. When the Sabbath day came, He went into the Sabbath and began to teach. The people were amazed at His teaching, for He taught with real authority, quite unlike the teachers of religious law. Suddenly a man in the synagogue who was possessed by an evil spirit cried out, "Why are you interfering with us, Jesus of Nazareth? Have you come to destroy us? I know who you are, the Holy One of God. But Jesus reprimanded him. Be quiet. Come out of the man, he ordered. At that, the evil spirit screamed, threw the man into a convulsion, and then came out of him. And amazement gripped the audience, and they began to discuss what had happened already. What sort of teaching is this? They asked excitedly. It has such authority. Even evil spirits obey his orders. The news about Jesus spread quickly through the entire region of Galilee. So here he is, speaking for the first time in Capernaum. And as he was speaking, what did we hear? That all who heard him were amazed, were utterly astonished at his teaching. Indeed, we could say that they were filled with wonder, according to the scripture that we have here. And this brings to mind a question for all of us. When was the last time that we were really amazed and filled with wonder? When was the last time you stopped everything and were absolutely gobsmacked, if I can say that, astonished? Say it the beauty of something. In the midst of joy or power, or even when you experienced a heartbreaking moment that simply left you astonished with life. God has given us lives with senses to witness the wonder around us. However, there are many moments when the wonder and astonishment can't get inside even though it's all around us. How many of us think that if we heard God's voice, we'd be utterly amazed? We heard the story from Mark's Gospel read this morning. Were we amazed by that passage of Scripture? When we witness his works in the world, how many of us are amazed? And when you look at a beautiful sunrise or sunset and thought, God's painting another masterpiece today. You know, there was one time when we were coming home from Toefield, we were on the highway, and it was getting towards the evening, and the sun was behind this big, brilliant, this cloud, and it lit it up like you would not believe. And you know what was really cool about this, and I think I did have sunglasses on, folks, but there was a neon lining all around that cloud, a brilliance that I had never seen before, and I just gasped. And I thought, God, you just woke me up there. What a wonderful thing. I think if I'm going to have distracted driving, that's going to be it, let me tell you. But it was just awesome to see the works of God firsthand in front of me. I could witness these things. When you say maybe you're moved and you're amazed by something else, when you listen to a piece of music that absolutely captivates your soul, or you see some striking artwork that amazes you, and you think, God has created people with the gift of creation, some amazing talents, and you marvel at that. But how often is our attitude like this? Yeah, cool. See, our problem is that we are so often distracted, we can't see or hear, and that amazement can't get inside. So life can't get inside, and we end up thinking, is holiness even desirable? Because, and I would say again, it is, because holiness means that we walk through this world with wonder, with amazement, with astonishment. Why are we not continually astonished? There's another passage here I want to share with you in Psalm 95, verses 6 to 10, that spoke to me. And it's familiar to a lot of you. Come, let us bow down in worship. Let us kneel before the Lord our Maker, for he is our God, and we are the people of his pasture, the flock under his care. And here it is. Today, if you would only hear his voice, do not harden your hearts as you did at Meribah. And that's when the Israelites were in the desert on the Exodus. And they were complaining about water. We don't have any water. We don't have any water. And so Moses approached God, and they had water. And then what did the people do? They didn't give thanks. They just rushed to drink to get their thirst taken care of. For 40 years, I was angry with that generation. There are people whose hearts grow astray, and they have not known my ways. So if we could only hear his voice, if today we could only see his presence, if today you know he's active, then do not harden your heart. All these wonderful things like amazement, wonder, and joy can't get into our hearts because our hearts have been hardened. Now, I'm not talking about the kind of hard hearts brought on by rebellion or being angry at God or trying to reject God. I think that quite often a hard heart is a distracted heart. God is present, God is active, he is present in any moment, but I miss it because I'm distracted. My heart and mind are preoccupied with other things elsewhere. And that's why distraction is the enemy of holy moments. It's so subtle. It sneaks up on us, and it takes our attention away from where we should be present and what we should be doing. It is the enemy of holy moments. It's the enemy of joy, the enemy of wonder. In fact, it's the enemy of life. Now, there are two kinds of distractions. There's interruptions and there's distractions, and they are not the same thing. I've heard interruptions described as someone or something that wants your attention. The distraction is someone or something, the distraction instead is someone or something that your attention wants. So often an interruption comes from the outside and tries to get your attention, while distractions come from the inside and our attention wants to go there. When it comes to interruptions, there are optional interruptions and there are obligatory ones. The optional one is just like a distraction. It's trying to get you off course. It's trying to get you out of this moment and take you somewhere else. Obligatory interruptions are things that need to be attended to. It means your course is being rerouted, and it's necessary to take the time to address whatever's going on. And so our response to these two things are different. So when they are optional, it's a distraction, and we get to exercise something that we could call the power of no. I'm reading another book as well right now, and it's by James Clear. Maybe some of you have read this book. It's quite a popular book right now. He's the author of a book called Atomic Habits, about changing your habits, making your habits different to improve your life, taking steps to do that. And it's a very, very interesting book. I highly recommend it. And in his book, he writes this: the more clearly you know how to spend your days, the easier it becomes to say no to the requests that steal your hours. This is the truth. We are guilty of distracted living, and we're guilty of driving, and we're guilty of distracted living. And the truth of life that really matters is that God has a vision for your life and my life. And the clearer we are on that vision, the easier it becomes to say no to the optional interruptions or distractions. And even in the obligatory interruptions, there can be holy moments because God is here. There is meeting in every facet of our lives. Even in church meetings, for example. I have to confess, I'm really guilty of this. I don't like meetings very much. Not a real meeting guy. I kind of have the attitude of Mark Cuban, owns the Dallas Mavericks basketball team. He says, the only meeting I'm interested in is one where I get a check. Yeah, I understand that. I really do. But you know what I've learned too is that in those obligatory moments, if we are focused on God, we can learn something from that as well. Those things that kind of we don't want to go through, we don't want to deal with, we don't want to happen, God is there as well, and he can help us. So it means that we don't have to be mad or resentful. It's certainly okay to feel frustrated about things, but the only thing that we can control in life are our thought processes. See, I could be mad about being interrupted. I can be mad about having to go to this thing and pout and whine and that sort of thing. And I've done that before, let me tell you. Or I could see this simply as what it is, an obligatory interruption. And when I do attend to this, I can choose to wish I was somewhere else, or I could choose to be present in that moment. Even when we run into obligatory interruptions, God can give us new holy moments. And the temptation is, will I be present where God is, or will my presence be somewhere else? I came across a little story of a man who had, before he was married, had a really strong prayer life, and he wanted to keep that prayer life going after he was married. And so he got married, had a lovely wife, lovely kids, and what he wanted to do more was to pray. So his plan was to get up at 4:30 every morning and to go pray, to be with God, because that was important to him. He wanted those holy moments with him. And what happened was, he said any number of times he would get up in the morning, he would creep across the floor until that creak hit. And then he'd hear, Dad? Daddy? Well, what was he going to do? He had to go in and see his kids. Sometimes our kids can have a nightmare and they need to be cuddled. And sometimes our kids are sick and they need to be tended to. And what we can learn from that is that even in those moments, they can be holy moments. Every one of those, we can be engaged with God. We can have those holy times with him as we take care of our loved ones too. Even when our holy moments are not the moments we expected them to be, this is a new moment of wonder, a new moment of meaning, a new moment of love. And this is the new holy moment where God is here and active and in the moment. The temptation we face is still the same. Will I be here? Will I be distracted or will I be present? Because the holy moment is the present moment. Distractions these days are a greater battle than ever because it's easier to live distracted in this period of history than any other. See, when I was a kid and I had to get a ride from school or something like that, there were no screens. What did I do? Well, as I was waiting, I could look at my shoes. I could look around at things. But because I had nothing to distract me, I had to be in the moment. And I'd probably noticed things that I've forgotten. You know, it's like when we were young guys and we go sit. It reminds me when we sit at Southgate and we were young single guys and we'd watch all the girls go by. It was like, that's a good moment. You know, we were just being young idiots, you know, that sort of thing, but that's what we did. You know, and so we didn't have the distractions that our kids today, our young people have today. They've got screens. They've got all sorts of things happening on those screens. They've got new videos. They've got social media. They've got games. They've got everything. And you know what? It's taking them out of the moment. And I really think we need to pray for our younger people coming up because there's a lot of stuff. Satan wants to steal their hearts. And there's a lot of stuff that God has intended for them, that won't happen because they are so tied up. We're so tied up in our phones and other things. See, we're not satisfied anymore. We're looking for the next new video, the next new social media post, the next game. And this is where we are. It's the battle we have been thrust into with our phones and other sorts of media. And if we give in to distraction, it will lead to destruction because it will wreck our lives. But because it will leave, not because it will wreck our lives, but because it will leave us incapable of building the kind of life that we were made for. We'll end up missing everything. Those things will rob us of every holy moment they can just because you and I can't be where our feet are. Have you ever heard of FOMO? Who knows what FOMO is? Okay, I'm going to enlighten you today. Something new you'll have learned. Maybe you remember it. It's an acronym that stands out for fear of missing out. What's that? What's there? What's next? We think of all we might miss, and so we're constantly distracted. And in many ways, FOMO is the problem, but it's also the solution. If the fear of missing out is constantly is asking, what might I miss? A deeper sense of a fear of missing out on highlights, fear of missing out highlights all that you and I will miss because I can't be there or live now. Imagine your life being stolen, your joy and holy moments being stolen, not by something amazing, astonishing, or wonderful, but simply by 1,000 little distractions. The holy moment is the present moment. God is here, He is active, and the moment is His. This week, I want to invite you to try something, even if it's just for 15 minutes, a couple of times a week. Do this. Get somewhere by yourself. No friends. Put away your phone. Put away any distractions you're thinking of. If there's something in your mind, dial it back. Get into a quiet time for 15 minutes and just sit there, whether you're out or be out in nature or wherever you are. And think about you and God in these holy moments that God has given us, because where you will be in that time will be a holy moment, and God will be there. Simply set aside some time to be with God. And I would say this, let your heart be open. Let your heart be open to astonishment. Let us be open to wonder. Let it be open to holy moments, because you and God will be there together. Because God is in the moment, and He is there, and you're with Him, and you will find Him there. So just be present, because the holy moment is the present moment. Amen.